doing this. So today our topic is, do irides change? And really that's not the topic. The topic is, what changes can we see in irides? And irides is the plural for iris, because we got two of them, right? So we're going to be using that plural a lot. As we look at this, the question is, do irides change? I would love it if you would just give me a comment in the chat box. Let me know if you are familiar with iridology. Especially, are you familiar with constitutional iridology? Because that's the direction we're going to be coming at this from. The direction of constitutional, which is very different from Jensenian or a lot of the other styles that are out there. So if you are, I'd love to see great big I am in the chat box. And I would love to also know, oh, I've asked that question already. All right, we're gonna skip that one because that was a faux pas on my part, my apologies. All right, let's start looking at some eyes. Now, those of you on Instagram, oh, just give me a second. I'm gonna turn off my room light because it casts a bit of a reflection on the screen that's not great for our Instagram people. Instagram people, I apologize. We've got this huge, beautiful sunny day. Yep, there we are. And we've got reflections coming in from the window. I'm going to move my camera closer so you can see. I want you to take a really good look at these photos. And it doesn't matter whether you know anything about iridology or not. Just take a really good look, kind of burn that in your memory. That is a gentleman's right eye, and Sousa is familiar. Great. Thank you, Sousa. And this is the left eye of the same gentleman. Okay. Got that burned in your memory? Because we need to be, we're going to look at these eyes in a couple of different ways today. These are the eyes of a client of mine, mid-40s. His name is Chris, wonderful man. We took these photos in 2015, and my camera back in 2015 was an 8 megapixel digital camera. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not a photographer. I had no idea that photography had come so far. Because that 8 megapixel camera was kind of old. All right, but it had a good ring flash on it. It had a good white light for the ring flash. It was a decent camera. It was an incandescent ring flash. All right, so then I got a new camera. About 18 months later, I got a 24 megapixel camera that has LED lighting. Now look at these images. These are the same fellow. These are the exact same fellow, different camera. Now, if you did not know that they were taken with a different camera, would you potentially, what would you say? What would you say about that? Would you think, wow, he's cleansed, he's done a lot of work? Or would you actually ask, what has really changed here? I'm gonna just, on this next slide, you're going to see, okay, so there we have his right eye taken with the original 8 megapixel. Here we have his right eye taken with a 24 megapixel. Can you see the difference? So the difference here is just so important because the difference wasn't cleansing. The difference wasn't that he did all this magically wonderful stuff and I'm such a fabulous healer that, well, look at what his eyes have done. That wasn't what changed. What changed here was the technology, right? We went from the image on the left, which has an incandescent ring flash, to the image on the right that is also digital but has an LED flash. The image on the left, there was no way to change the lighting within the camera, the lighting settings. The image on the right, we could change this from fluorescent to tungsten to daylight to, you know, just all kinds of options to change how the camera processes the information that it sees. And doing that, we can change that image on the right to be just all kinds of things, right? So this is a question that we need to be aware of. When we look at these, this is the kind of thing that we need to be aware of when we are talking about irides changing. And especially when we're looking at these Facebook pages and Facebook posts and places like that where it says, when you cleanse, your eyes are going to change. When you do the right things, your eyes are going to change. We've got people out there that are saying that this kind of a thing would be the result of change. You know, just by looking at it, that it wasn't the result of dietary change. It wasn't the result of supplements. It wasn't that he did a series of colonics, nothing like that. It wasn't that he did IV chelation, nothing like that. He didn't do a gallbladder flush or a kidney flush. And you know the difference and you know what the difference is, very specifically when you look at the skin tones and when you notice that the sclera color is also different. Note how the image on the right, those skin tones are more blue. The image on the left, the skin tones are more red. When we see that kind of a difference in skin tones, we know instantly that the lighting is what changed. All right. Same with the sclera. Now, some people do have a yellowish sclera, which is why we would always want to assess the sclera in natural light, because that's going to tell us what color the sclera really is. But notice how even the sclera on the image on the right has a bit of a more, I don't know, it's just got a different hue to it. Technology is the answer. Now I want you to also look very, very closely. So again, for those of you on Instagram, I'm moving in way close. Those of you on the webinar, you're okay with this. And you can see that if we go straight up between 1130 and 1230, we've got this dark area, which on an 8 megapixel photo looks like rarefaction. So if you're familiar with iridology terms, you know that a rarefaction means fibers are separated, or fibers are separated. It's not that they are separated. They are inherently separated. That's how the person was programmed. And that was how I assessed this eye at the outset. When I got my new camera and I redid it, can you see that it's not rarefaction at all, but it's black splattery pigment sitting on the surface? Do you see that? And that black splattery pigment doesn't suggest cancer. It does suggest an inherently compromised liver, a liver that doesn't want to do its job very well, a liver that needs a ton of support. All right? Is that making sense so far? Hopefully it is. You know, when we are doing iris photos, it's not just, is it an incandescent ring flash or is it an LED flash that is set to daylight setting? We also need to consider, does the camera use batteries? Because new batteries give more power and give a brighter light than batteries that are halfway worn out. So there are so many variables. What it really says to us is that if we are trying to use photography to quote unquote follow or justify that we see changes in the irides, that we're trying to use iridology to track changes in the irides, we're going to be sadly disappointed because we do not have available to you and me with our tiny little wallets the kind of technology available that will let us do that accurately. In order to do that accurately, we would actually need a slit lamp microscope with a built-in camera that did not use batteries, but instead plugged into a wall, right? That would be how we would control for consistency. And again, we would have the camera's settings noted so that every image was taken with the exact same settings. Makes sense science-wise, doesn't it? Right? Isn't that good science that you control the parameters the same from one subject to the next to the next? And if you don't control all the variables, then your data is, they call it dirty data, because the data is useless. You're not comparing the same things anymore. So this is such an important thing. Oh my goodness, this is so important, because images like what you see on the computer screen are used to sell product. People will say, look at the before and after, you know, the gentleman came to me with eyes like this, and we did this fasting and this cleansing, and we sold him, you know, $12,000 worth of product. And guess what? Look at his eyes now. And it's like, yeah, no, it does not work like that. Look at the skin tones. Double check, what does the flash look like? You know, and to do photos using natural light, nearly impossible, because you're always going to get reflections from the lights and from the sun and from other things. So the better question is, what changes can we see in the irides and what do those changes mean? Okay, do you see the difference? We're not asking about tracking anything. We're being more specific here. This is so important. So I'm just going to pop back there. Okay. I have been an iridologist now, as I said at the very outset, for 40 years. My first 10 years, I practiced Jensenian iridology, and I just about walked away from iridology. I had been taught that if we fasted a client, if we did cleanses with the client, if we did herbs with the client, if we corrected their diet, if we helped them correct their lifestyle, that we would see the irides change. Now, I bought a camera very, very early on. It was a print film camera, you know, really good single lens reflex SLR. You know, it was a professional grade. It was a professional grade camera. And had the right kind of lights on the front of it and all that kind of stuff. I had it built by a fellow who was building eye cameras back then. And so I was taking good photos. And we were controlling everything we possibly could. But over those first 10 years, I never saw a pigment disperse. I never saw a pigment go away. I never saw a fiber move. I didn't see anything change in the irides. And it was frustrating. I would tell a client, when we do this cleanse, we're going to see this change. And they did the cleanse, and sometimes they repeated it 2 or 3 times. And we didn't see any of the changes. And it was so frustrating that I seriously decided, this isn't working. I'm going to walk away from it. But just as I was about to walk away was when I was blessed, truly blessed, to learn constitutional iridology. And it just made so much sense. The more I studied it, the more sense it made, the more it actually worked in my clinical practice, because I was no longer saying, we do this cleanse, the eyes will change. I was now saying, these are your symptoms that you want my help with. These are the markers we see in the eye that explain why your body is susceptible to those symptoms. And because these markers correlate to these organs, we know we need to support those organs in order to improve your health and strengthen things to where the symptoms will go away. So I took the focus off. Constitutional takes the focus off the eyes changing and puts the focus on understanding how the body works and understanding the changes in the body and using the body to monitor changes, which made so much more sense to me. And it gave me so much more success with my clients. So are you ready now to learn about how and why the irides change and what those changes mean? If you are, I want to see a comment like ready in the chat box or in the comments, because we are going to look at some eyes. Yeah. Thank you, Souza. Thank you so much for those of you who are weighing in on this. I love that. Thank you. The first thing we need to know is that pigment may be acquired or may become more dense. Pigment does not disperse. We can fast, we can cleanse, we can use special diets, we can do all kinds of things, but pigment is not going to go away. Valerie, thank you on Instagram for saying you are ready. That is fabulous. And so what we do know, though, is pigment can acquire over time. So let's look at another set of eyeballs, okay? That work for you? Here is an eye of a gentleman who was in his mid-40s when we took this photo. And as you look at it, again, these are different cameras, so we already have explained why we've got the difference in the iris color, why we've got the difference in the skin tone, and why we've got the difference in the sclera color. So what I really want you to do is, with this first image, look between 6 o'clock and about 8:30, very close to the yellow. So for those of you who are on Instagram, we're looking right in here. Those of you who are with me on the webinar, we're looking right in here. Okay, notice what you see. Now let's look at this eye. What do you see there? What do you see? Has that area changed? What is sitting in here now? Okay, and for those of you who are on the webinar, what is sitting in here now? This is pigment. These photos were taken about 23 years apart. This was my very first print film camera. This is my new digital camera. And so what we see with this is we see, again, that, that we've got the pigment acquiring. Now, some of you are going, woo, those eyes look pretty different. Okay, so let's look for some landmarks. Let's make sure that I'm not trying to pull one over on you. Let's look straight up here. We've got a jut out with a little dark spot. We have a jut out right here. So we're looking at close to 12 o'clock. We're looking at just before 10 o'clock. And let's use this one as well. We're looking at roughly 4:30-ish. Now, notice the pupil size. As the pupil gets smaller, these markings get narrower. So when we come over here, notice the pupil's smaller and the camera is a little bit tilted. So we've got our one at about 12 o'clock, one at just before 10 o'clock, and one at about 5 o'clock. So these are the same eye. They're the same eye, the same person. But what we have in the more recent image is this pigment between 6 o'clock and about 8:30. Now, the reason the cameras are not totally level is because I do handheld. I don't put my camera on a stand. I don't use a chin rest. That is more awkward for my client, and I find that this works just fine. So it works. We can work with this. When we are looking at an iris, we are looking at markings and indicators that show us inherent predispositions that go back for 3 to 4 generations. 3 to 4 generations. So some of what we see, this client may have symptoms to go with, but some of it, the right question to ask isn't, do you have a problem? It's, is there a family history that goes along with this indicator? And there likely is. Like this gentleman, his grandfather suffered incredible gut problems, stomach issues, bloating, heartburn, whatnot. When we look at the digestive zone, that's what he's got here. Now, this gentleman did not have gut issues like that as a young man, but as he's getting older, he's developing more gut issues, more like his grandfather had. So then we want to pay attention to that pigment that is between 6 o'clock and about 8:30. And again, we need to know that this can either be inherent or it can be inherently triggered, which means that this pigment came up at this point in time in this gentleman's life as an indicator that there is something inherently not functioning right or not wanting to function right in his liver. And the color of the pigment is what's telling us liver. So the dark pigment was clearly not here in the older photo when he was younger, but it's definitely there in the more recent photo. And so we need to then ask him questions about that. So questions about that brown pigment would be things like, do you have any history of liver symptoms? Now, most of your clients don't know what a liver symptom is. They don't realize that their liver is so important and that it does so many different jobs. So we have to break it down. Things like, when you eat fatty foods, do they feel okay? How is your immune system? Is your skin itchy, or are you prone to rashes and eczema and psoriasis and acne kinds of things? How's your blood? Because liver plays key roles in blood. How's your cholesterol? Because liver plays key roles in the formation of cholesterol. So we will break those questions down into things that our client will understand and recognize. Should we look at another set of eyes? Yeah? You want to do that? If you do, let me know. Okay, we flipped backwards there. You ready? Here we go. This is another set of eyes from the same person. So older camera, light was not quite as bright. So what we have here is we have a larger pupil. So let's try to find some markings that will prove that this is actually the same eye as the next one we're going to look at. Let's start with looking at this fiber that is veering off sideways. So for those of you on Zoom with us, let's look at this for this fiber. Let's also look for this fiber coming down here. Okay, so We've got one at about 7:30 and one that goes from 4 till about 4:30. 7:30 or 8 and 4 to 4:30. So these are the same eye. Let's look for pigment then. This first image was of one of my sons. He was very little when we took this photo. He was probably about, let me just think how old he is now, probably about 6 years old. Okay, look down here and see, do you see any extra pigment sitting in here at all? And let's look over here. What about over here? Anything extra in here that's really obvious? We've got some oranges and things. All right, let's look at the newer photo. This one was done a couple of years ago. He is now, I think he's 30 now. I've got 7 kids. I'm sure they will forgive me for not remembering their ages. Look at the pigments that we've got coming down here. We've got this one, these, this. We've got some here that weren't there in the original one, although there's a light in the way, so maybe they were. So we'll focus on this one and this little patch right here, and even coming out to here where we've got some brownish rusty colors out here. So we have the very same image, but over those 20 years, he has accumulated some pigment. So what do these color changes mean? Again, the color of the pigment teaches us about which organ is likely inherently programmed to be struggling. And the location of the pigment tells us which organ is going to bear the brunt of that stress, right? It's like if mama's in a bad mood, everybody ends up in a bad mood, right? Mama is the source of it and all the other people in the house get the fallout from it, right? Not that that has ever happened in my house, just saying. And so again, when we see these pigments, they suggest that inherent predisposition towards some liver imbalance, some liver issues, some things that have become activated as he's gotten a bit older. And so when we look at this, we don't necessarily absolutely have to look at each and every pigment location and assess each and every one. We would assess that we've got brown. And then if he had symptoms in any area where the brown was sitting, we would address those organs as well. Okay, and so then we can do whatever we know to do. Another thing that we know happens is that pupil shape can change. Can you see that this pupil is actually not round? It's actually very flat on the top, right up here. Pupil shape equals spinal alignment and nerve feed to the body. This is not inherent. This is completely earned. So what that means is that this person has done something, maybe taken a bad fall, has chronically bad posture, and their spine has now been misaligned for a long period of time. And it's going to take a long period of time to get that alignment back proper the way it's supposed to be. There are tens of thousands of nerve endings in the iris. And ultimately, all of those nerves go to or come from the brain, right? And when you think about the eyeball itself, that you have the eyeball, I just happen to have a spare eyeball right here. Everybody should have an extra eyeball on their desk. And coming out of the eyeball is the optic nerve, right? Right there. And that optic nerve, the eyeball itself is the largest neural receptor in your body. And this optic nerve goes straight to the brain. There is nothing in between. It's one continuous nerve that goes to the brain, to 2 different places in the brain. And so when we see that the pupil is misshapen, and we understand that there is actually an amazing amount of innervation from this edge, particularly of the pupil, to the brain directly, we understand then that this is telling us, going back and forth, what's going on in the body. So these flattenings again suggest long-standing spinal subluxations that really should be addressed. This is a sign that can be changed because it's inherent, okay? Or sorry, because it's not inherent, but it is dynamic. So you likely aren't going to get a flattening this significant like in a weekend of bad posture and falling down the stairs. But you would if you fell down the stairs and you didn't get your spine realigned for a few years, right? Then this is gonna settle in like this. So when we see a flattened pupil, we then understand that that affects different parts of the body because of how the nerves feed different parts of the body. So it's not just when we think about spine and how the nerves come off the spine, if the spine is misaligned, the nerve feeds that are coming out of that part of the spine may struggle as well. Those nerves go into different organs, and that can impact how that organ functions. Does that all make sense? Yeah? And so when we see a flattened pupil, we need to help our client access the right kinds of care to get their spine realigned. And there might be physical stuff they need to do, whether it's chiropractic or physiotherapy or massage or bone therapy or just whatever. We may need to help them emotionally because those misalignments can deep seat emotions in us. And we may need to use supplements because as they're realigning, those muscles are going to go, I don't like this alignment. And the vertebrae themselves are going to have to continue to remodel to hold the new alignment. So we may need to help them with supplements. In working towards getting that spine to be properly aligned, we also then begin to correct the nerve feed to other parts of the body. Is this all making sense for you? I'm hoping it is. Another change that we can see is a lipemic diathesis. I've never seen a lipemic diathesis in a child. The youngest I've ever seen it is a 22-year-old. And so it appears with time, usually not till in the 40s or 50s or 60s, although again, we're seeing it earlier. And with time, it may become darker and it may circumnavigate the eye. So it may start out as just a partial ring around the eye. So we're looking at this white milky film right here. So it can start out as just being a little piece, a little sliver, and that can grow and spread, and it can get wider and it can get more opaque. So that's another change that we can see. We will never see a lipemic diathesis disappear because the lipemic diathesis is in the cornea, and the cornea does not give this away. Once it's there, it's not going away. It's going to be there as a reminder to behave yourself, to eat properly, to take care of your liver, to do all that kind of good stuff. So we are not going to be able to get that out of the eye once it is there. Healing lines. Oh, this is one that I used to just drive me nuts way back at the beginning of my iridology career, because we were taught that wherever there was a lesion, and that's the style of iridology we did back then, that is not a constitutional term, and there were lines like this in it, that was healing. And we would look at somebody's eyes with just a magnifying glass and a pen light, and we would talk about, oh, there's healing lines in there. That's a really good sign. And now we know that that is not true at all. Now we know the iris is made up of layers of fiber stacked on top of each other. And when there is an inherent separation in the top layer, we are simply looking at the fibers that are below that. This has nothing to do with healing. We are just looking down a layer or two in the iris. So when this person does all the right things and they're feeling wonderful and they've got their health back and they're going, thank you, thank you, thank you, I couldn't have done it without you, the eyes are still going to look like this. Right? And quite frankly, I don't care that the eyes don't change. I care that my client feels better, that my client has good health, that they have done what they needed to restore their health. So healing lines do not happen. Lacunae do not get smaller. Now, again, the Jensenian term for these things is lesion. So let's pick we're going to use the constitutional term. Let's pick a lacuna and look at how they change. I was taught that a lacuna like this, that over time became like this, was an indication that the lacuna was getting smaller and it was healing. What is the other change that you notice? And these are all the same eye. Again, different cameras. So the first two images are the same camera. Then we get over here. What is the other change you notice in the iris? What is the thing that visibly has changed besides the technology? How did changing the technology change the iris? Any ideas? I'd love it if someone would type some ideas in. What are you seeing? What is the change? The size of the pupil, Susan. Yes, yes. If I could give you a gold star, Susan, and I don't mean that to sound in any way demeaning, I would give you one. That is what changed here. Brilliant job. Size of pupil. Remember that the fiber, I'm going to focus on this middle one since, and my camera stand is starting to, I don't know, it's being weird here. Just give me a half a second to just make that a little more stable. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. When we look at the iris and we look at this length, the fiber that's in here is the same, there's the same amount of fiber tissue as there is over here. So what that means is that when the iris is scrunched up, because the pupil is huge, this fiber needs to shift a little bit, but it hasn't actually, like, it's not that a fiber that's here is going to move down here. Nothing like that. It's that when we take this fiber and we stretch it out, it's going to get longer horizontally and narrower vertically. Does that make sense? That all we've done is we've taken something like this, and as we stretch it out, it does this. It's like a balloon, right? If you do balloon animals and you blow it up and then you squeeze it different ways and twist it different ways, you can make it different shapes. That's what's happening here with the fibers. And so as we look at this, we need to remember that lacunae do not actually get smaller. It all relates to the pupil size. And this is another huge, huge thing to note with technology, is if the light is brighter, as it is in the image on the right, the pupil will be smaller. If the light is dimmer, as it is with the two images on the left, the pupil will be larger. And that is going to affect the appearance of the lacunae, their shape primarily. So with that, those are the changes that we wanted to talk about today. Registration for the next Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Certification Preparation class is opening on Thursday. Are you excited? Because I am. Would it be okay if I shared some details of that course with you? Registration isn't open right now, so it's not like I'm saying get your wallets out or anything like that. Just wanted to share some details with you. So here is what we've got. We're going to have two different energy. Thank you for that. We're going to have two different sections of the class running this time. I've realized that one time is probably not enough. So you can, if you decide you want to join the course, you can consider joining us for the Thursday class time, which will start April 16th. It will run 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. For those of you who live in different time zones than me, that's 10 a.m. Pacific, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight, 6 p.m. if you live in London, England. Not so great for you if you live in Australia because it's 3 a.m. But for those of you for whom that first offering's not great, we're running a second group. And that will be starting Friday, April 17th from 4 till 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, which is great for North America still, not so great for London, but really good for Australia because it's about 8 a.m. depending on which time zone you would be in. And so Energy says, is it possible to take it no matter where you are in the world? Energy, I love your question because yes, this course is taught via 20 live 2-hour-long webinars. So I've had students in the UK and in Australia, all over North America, like from way down in Florida to way up the east coast of Canada, and I am in the West. So anywhere in the world, if you've got internet access, you can do this. I used to be a Jensenian, my first 10 years of iridology, but I am no longer. I am now constitutional. My last 30 years, I have been constitutional because Jensenian just wasn't working for me. Things that I was taught there, I could not prove in my practice, and I had to walk away from it. So want you to make note of two different addresses on the internet. If you would like to download an iris map, go to iridology.education. When the pop-up box pops up, enter your information and you'll be sent an email with the link to download a constitutional iridology map. Energy, what is the difference? Oh, there are so many differences. This is such a huge question. Jensen says the eyes will change if you cleanse and fast and whatever. That's really the biggest one. He had a limited amount of teaching as to how the organs interrelated and how to correlate the different markings that we see in the eyes. And so what we teach with constitutional is that the eyes don't change. In my program, I know I go a lot deeper than most International Iridology Practitioner Association instructors do. I am certified by IPA. And that is, I teach my clients, my students rather, not just what the markings are, but how they work together, what kinds of questions those markings suggest you need to ask your client. And then we even touch a little bit on nutrition and herbs and things like that. That would be sound recommendations depending on your client's symptoms. Okay, so there's a huge amount of difference. Energy, I'm going to just ask for you to hang out with me. I do these free webinars every Tuesday and Friday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Hang out with me for a few weeks because I've got about 16 different topics. And if you have a Jensen background at all, you will see you'll see the differences very, very clearly. So Energy, I'm going to ask you, do you have a Jensen background? And while we're waiting for that to come in, we are doing a launch webinar for the course, and we're doing it Thursday evening, Thursday the 27th at 5 p.m. And it's a webinar where I'm going to share with you all of the details about the course, who it's really designed for, what you can expect to learn, why you would need it, what's included in the course beyond 22-hour live online classes. And I'm also going to, of course, be sharing the tuition and the registration link. Now, I'm really going to suggest that if you are at all interested in iridology and you're thinking, yeah, I'd like to take an iridology class, get registered for that, iridology.education/webinar. Get registered for it. Why? Because for 2 days from Thursday night until Saturday evening at 6 p.m., there's going to be a special $400 bonus as a fast action early registration bonus. Just want to share with you what some of my students have said. This is Karen Choate. She had certified, she has her IPA certification under me, and she says, Judith, I just returned from a regenerative detoxification course where iridology is implemented. Now, Karen came to me with no iridology under her belt at all. And she said, I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with their iridology education. No support, lots of unanswered questions, and a lot of confusion. Mostly they finished their classes not knowing how to implement what they had learned. I feel so absolutely blessed to have been taught by you. I feel totally supported even still as I've graduated. And actually, she's got 2 years here, but now it's nearly 3 years ago. I don't think anyone out there is practicing, educating, or teaching iridology like you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm eternally grateful. And Energy, you're in Denmark. Oh, lovely. Well, then the Thursday class would probably be a good timing for you because it would be evening for you on Thursday nights. And Energy, we'll talk about pricing in the webinar on Thursday. Now, I will post that webinar in my Facebook group. So if you go to iridology.education, it will be posted there within an hour or two after it's finished, because I know 5 p.m. for you is not a great time. It's probably 5 p.m. for me is 3 a.m. for you or something silly like that, unless you want to get up at 3 a.m. for an hour and a half to watch the video. But I will post the video so you can watch it in my Facebook group. And then you'll get the pricing and you'll get what the $400 bonus is and all that kind of good stuff. So again, here's just a real quick rundown of what you get. You get 20 live 2-hour-long webinars. You get a 200-page digital downloadable textbook, full color, and you get 45 pages of cheat sheets. So that's sort of the point form notes for the entire class, and an iridology map, and a whole lot more. And you get more long-term mentoring and support than you can imagine. Like Karen said in her testimonial, she is still feeling supported, and it's nearly 3 years later. What you will learn, you're going to learn iridology, you're going to learn sclerology, and you're going to learn both of those at a level to prepare you to do the IPA certification exam if you so choose. We incorporate a little bit of basic nutrition and herbology as they relate to iridology. Now, I don't actually teach the nutrition and herbology in this course, but we tie it in. So if you have some background in those, you will find this very, very useful. Michelle Davies came to me already well certified. She had 3 certificates from Dr. Pesic and 1 from Darko Purse, but she says this is the most amazing iridology course I've taken. Judith's course is top on my list. Most importantly, it taught her how to put everything together to make a proper assessment. She'd never been taught that. In all of her certifications, she was taught markings. She wasn't taught how to use what she had learned. So this is what it comes down to. Again, we've got the 2 sections, one that starts Thursday, April 16th, 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Energy, that's a great question. She's asking, am I in the States? I'm in Canada. And when we get to the webinar on Thursday, the pleasant surprise is I'm charging in Canadian dollars. So that's another plus. So the tuition will be in Canadian dollars. So we've got Thursday, April 16th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time for one group. And I limit my groups to 10 students per group. So when a group fills, if you want that time of day, you're gonna have to wait till the next time I offer the program. Friday, April 17th, 4 to 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time is the second group. So when you register, you choose your group and you get to stay in that group for the duration of the program. So again, if you're interested in getting the downloadable map, go to iridology.education. And if you're also, or if you're interested in signing up for the launch webinar for Thursday evening, where I'll be talking about the $400 bonus that early registrants get, sign up for the webinar at iridology.education/webinar. Excellent. Well, I hope what you've seen today, and I so appreciate you being with me, is that the eyes don't change the way we thought they did. Right? I mean, remember, I practiced ginsening and iridology for 10 years, and I never saw an iris change, as in get better. Never saw pigment disperse, never saw healing lines happen, never saw a lipemic diathesis disappear. But I certainly did see people's health change. And that's what this is all about, right? This is all about helping to guide people through changing their health. It's not about changing their eye color. It really isn't. And so I hope with that, that you will consider joining me for the launch webinar Thursday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, Mountain Standard Time, for another few weeks. And you'll learn more about the course, about what's included, about, again, who should take it, why they need it, and what the tuition is and what the options are for payment for that. It'll all be in the webinar that we are hosting at iridology.education/webinar. So I thoroughly hope that you will join me then. Just before we wrap it up for today, are there any questions? And Energy, I love that you've been asking all kinds of questions. That's fabulous. Thank you for that. Any other questions from anywhere, any of the platforms that we're on? It doesn't look like it. It looks like we're good. It looks like we're good. All right. Wonderful. Again, thank you so much for being with me. I truly appreciate it. Friday, 11 a.m., we're going to be right here again. If you're on Instagram, if you're with me on the webinar, Facebook, sorry we missed out on you, but we'll pick them up next week. Yeah, you guess you will know in the webinar. I'm not sure what that comment is in context with, Energy. The webinar will be recorded and it will be posted in my Facebook group. So you need to ask to join the Facebook group called Iridology Education. Iridology.education private Facebook group. That is where the webinar will be posted, because I am making the $400 bonus offer to my group and to my email list. Okay, so if you're not in that group, or if you're not getting my emails, we need to fix that. So with that, I look forward to seeing you again Thursday night, hopefully, and Friday as well. So take care and have a fabulous day. Bye for now. We're just wrapping up. Bye for now. Thank you, Energy. Hope to see you later. Bye-bye.